Your attention, please. Paul and Alex are required to proceed to the gate immediately.
What?
No way.
What is happening here?
This is the last call for the Layovers podcast.
Really?
Come on, man. This is our thing. We got this.
Oh, yeah.
And we made it.
Of course, geeks.
Flight 88 to... Where are we going? Mexico? Astana? Where are we going, Alex?
I don't even remember. 88, though, that's very auspicious. That's good luck, so...
True. Oh, wow. It shows that you've lived in Hong Kong, man, because I didn't think about that at all, actually.
Very auspicious. It was my American football jersey number when I played at college.
Oh,
specifically for that reason.
So suddenly I understand a lot of your personality, a lot of concussion, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. Dislocated jaw, you name it.
That's part of your charm, man.
Yeah, there you go.
So Mexico it is.
Mexico. Oh, my goodness.
Astana will be the next one because you've just been there finally. So we'll do Astana in the next one. Guys, we're really sorry. It's been, a month since we last released an episode, and probably 6 weeks since we last actually talked to each other, because you remember the last one was a pre-recorded one.
Yep.
How are you, Alex?
I'm good. It's been a while. I had a quiet January, which was nice. Actually, it's been a quiet Q1, thank God, because last year, I mean, we've discussed this ad nauseum, but it was a long year.
For me, it was the opposite. I've flown, I think, more in the first 2 months of this year that I had flown in the entire 2014 or something.
Wow.
Right? Which is, anyway, but I've decided not to travel in March at all. I might just have to do Paris, but I could do the Eurostar. Trains, what?
Oh my goodness.
Am I crazy? So what happened in the past month? A lot of stuff happened. So first, I know that currently you are not drinking, but man, Suntory and Nika have also announced that they have running out of whiskey.
They are. And actually, our friend Chris Ratcliffe on Twitter, who's the sort of resident expert on all things whiskey, he tweeted this out yesterday, day before yesterday. That's how I found out about it. And I'm looking at my bottle of Nika coffee grain whiskey that I talked about on Mastication Nation recently.
That's
one of the ones that's disappearing. Yep. So... Gosh.
Coffee grain and the malt whiskeys. I think they say it's temporary for Nika. At least the barrel one is still there because that's my favorite. And Suntory is also discontinuing some of their... Oh, my God. Anyway, so guys, fly in and Jolly if you want to have some of those. I think Suntory is still served on some of those flights. So no travel because we have to prepare for Brexit, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's been interesting to watch some of the news come through about what's going to happen if there's a no-deal Brexit with... everything from passports to whether airlines will still be able to operate. So stay tuned.
Yeah. And one of the quirky news was that I think airports in Spain would have, because Spain is a very popular destination for Brits, would have up to 5 hours of queuing because suddenly Brits would not be allowed through the normal queue. Anyway, I mean, we'll see. We're not going to dwell on that because we have enough of this every single freaking day. I've also dedicated my past month for fighting Heathrow. The consultation of the new landing path that I've mentioned, guys, has just closed. And I think I will never get a job at Heathrow because what I've wrote to them was not really nice, actually.
Really? Well, I mean, I think they need the feedback, don't they?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was fair, and I mentioned that I travel a lot because I put my name. It was not anonymous, but I was a bit angry at the way they've actually done this whole thing. Anyway, and also I'm Marie Kondoing my office, so Alex has a different view of me because to avoid him seeing the mess behind me, all the boxes and the trash, I've actually put the camera slightly different. So he sees the worst angle of my face now on the video. And the other thing that might happen for Brexit if BA still flies to Spain is having a lot of wind. Have you seen that flight BA 492 trying to land in Gibraltar, was it?
Extraordinary. Yeah, there were quite a few different angles, wasn't there? There was somebody on board and there were a few people on the ground. It didn't look like much fun at all. I've never seen quite such violent oscillations, if you will, so close to the ground. So, gosh, I mean, kudos to the pilots. But the wind that whips through Gibraltar or the Strait of Gibraltar is fierce at the best of times. And I think that they got a taste of that.
The winds are expressing their Brexit anger as well. Have you ever flown to Gibraltar? I've never.
Yes, I have. My wife and I did it about 15 years ago. It's pretty spectacular. And then we walked across the runway, because the runway bisects the islet, or the peninsula. It's not an island itself. So you can watch a plane land, and there's almost like a giant railroad crossing, and it lifts up, and you can walk right across the runway.
I love that. I think there's an airport in Greece on one of the islands that has that, where the road, maybe it's Corfu, when the road also crosses. It's pretty fun. Another thing that happened almost exactly 5 years to the day today, so we're recording March 6th, is the disappearance of the Malaysian flight. Yeah, I was about to say, the time flies, man. But I think it's still going to be the biggest ever mystery in the airline industry. We would probably never know.
No.
A little reminder to all the people that are still suffering of not having closure about that. One little feedback about something we mentioned in the last episode by Joel Kandia on Twitter. With regards to this premium business shtick with Malaysian Airlines, since we're talking about Malaysian, essentially they're keeping the first class seats without the first class service. That's the premium business thing they're doing, which makes sense in a way.
What does that mean, though?
I think
first class service, and meaning the catering is not quite as good, or
we cannot afford to do a first class anymore. It doesn't make sense economically, but we cannot afford either to refit our aircraft with old business seats. So what we're going to do, we're going to tell people you're going to have the same service as business class, but you're going to have better seats.
Fine. That sounds good to me.
But the biggest news, the A380 is dead.
Yeah. The writing was on the wall for this for a long time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think we all saw it coming, but I don't know about you, but I was surprised by the absoluteness, if you will, of the announcement that it wasn't going to be phased out, or they'd keep the order book open. They've said, it's done. We're done with this. And this was partly because Emirates decided to convert an existing, well, I don't know if it was a firm order or an MOU for A380s into A350s, right?
So they had 39 A380s on order, then going for 40 A330-900s and 30 A350-900.
That's it.
So that's the mix. But I don't know, it's a chicken and egg. I don't know in which order, because Hong Kong Airline had canceled its order at the end of last year. They had 10. I don't know, again, order or promise or whatever. We know how it is. Qantas had canceled theirs on February 7th, so a week before the announcement, 8 of them. Qatar, the same week, said they wouldn't recommit after the end of flying, so probably after the 12 years of their own 380. There was also Amedeo, which is lesser, canceled 20, but I'm thinking those ones were for Emirates. I'm not sure. So I don't know, they were probably talking before. So was all these cancellations happening because basically behind the scenes Airbus was telling me, guys, we don't think we can make it? Or was it the other way around? All these cancellations led Airbus to
that's a good question. I don't know. I think it was probably somewhere in the middle. Yeah. People have been hitting us up on Twitter about this. My reaction generally is sadness, because I like that airplane. I mean, it's extraordinarily ugly, but that's just one component of it.
I agree.
You're right. But it's a lovely airplane to fly as a passenger. And no matter where you're sitting, it's quiet. It's dark when it needs to be, but light and airy when it needs to be. It's comfortable. I don't know what it's like as cabin crew, but I know that the pilots I know that fly it really, really like it as well. Yeah. And I think it's almost a sort of Hayao Miyazaki-esque airplane in its grotesqueness and its size and all of that. I just think it's a shame, but when you look at the numbers, it never ever was ever going to come close to making a profit, let alone breaking even.
Hey guys, just listen to our 87 first episodes and you'll see that we always mentioned that it was always on the brink of being cancelled. I think one of the reasons that Emirates wouldn't commit to the 39 orders, because they really wanted them, right, is that Rolls-Royce wasn't delivering a new engine. Yeah. And basically Engine Alliance, which is GE and Pratt & Whitney, already had thrown the towel like a few months ago, said, whatever, we're never going to do an engine again for the 380. So there was no new engine, which meant that the economics were not getting better. So there was no like A380neo, whatever. So there was really no, the plane wasn't evolving. So I guess Emirates had no choice but.
Yeah, it's a real shame. Not to say that the planes that aren't on the market now or are coming down the pipeline aren't also wonderful. I just think that airplane was so different compared to what we had now.
People recognize the 747 and they recognize the 380. And these customers, like not geeks like us, but regular customer will be very happy to fly the 380, if only just to fly the 380. They recognize it. They are very happy to fly it. It's one of the aircrafts that, again, I agree with you. It's ugly, but it's different, and people loved it. Yeah. And I loved it. I flew it. So the announcement was made on Valentine's Day, for crying out loud. I flew it the next day because I was in Dubai back then, and I flew it the next day, and it was like, oh my God. I mean, it's not the end because I think Emirates is still getting its latest one in 2020. So if you add, let's say, 12 years, 2032, 2033.
Yeah, they're around for a long time.
Yeah, and maybe then, maybe Emirates will actually try to make them last longer because there won't be any others, and they might be relying on them for some routes. So maybe we'll see them for 15 years. They'll go like BA. And talking about BA still is interested in buying 380s because they have Heathrow, which is the most congested airport in the world because there's no gates. So probably BA might be looking at buying some of the secondary market, like secondhand, because, their 747s are like, 85 years old or something?
Yeah.
So they might actually get... But I agree with you. The feeling, I don't know, especially the landing, it almost feels that the airplane is at a standstill. It's not flying anymore. It's gliding when it's landing. It's magnificent.
Yeah, it's a real achievement in engineering at every sense of the word. Although I was fascinated to see now that Singapore Airlines have retired the first 4, I think it was, original deliveries, and they're now being broken up as we speak in France, that they are of much less value for spare parts because to make them work, they had to do a lot of custom wiring and fixings inside those early models. And there's a fascinating moment in a documentary I watched right when the A380 was first being introduced, where the main core of wiring that connected the front of the airplane to the rear bulkhead, and it has to have been, I don't know, 15 centimeters thick in terms of this bundle of wire, was like 2 inches too short to make the connection.
Oh, wow.
And like the cameras were on them as they made this realization that it was too short, and they had to redo all this stuff. So it was interesting to learn that the book value versus the scrap value that these airlines and these parts brokers were going to get was significantly less. The other thing I think that was interesting in terms of legacy was we all know the 747 just celebrated its 50th anniversary. 50th anniversary of its first flight, and there's nearly 1,600 made. The A380 first flew 14 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very short lifespan for an aircraft.
And the order book on the 747, while still small, is still open. And there were only 234 A380s ever built. So in terms of cultural impact and scarcity going forward, I mean, the A380 is much smaller, and while some of those airlines may cling on to them, they are actively being retired and scrapped. So
absolutely.
Your opportunity to fly them while still there in the future is going to be much scarcer.
And who would have believed that a 747 would outlive the 380, right?
Yeah. No, I don't think anybody would.
Yeah, it's crazy. But it's interesting to go back at the history because there was a lot of course, armchair analysts saying, Airbus was wrong since the start or Boeing was right since the start. And if you look back at the 90s where this program was jump-started, Boeing also had at the same time their own program for a massive jumbo, like the successor of the 747. Yeah. They canceled it and went for the 747-8. So the one that is actually not really selling either. But then they focused their attention on what became the Dreamliner. The bet was, because, it's never black and white. Airbus' bet was passenger traffic doubles every 15 years. There's going to be congestion at airports. We need to fix that by offering this massive ship, which ended up being the 380. And Boeing said, no, because of that congestion, smaller airports will rise and we'll have these point-to-point avoiding the big hubs. Neither predictions were absolutely correct because actually, yes, passenger traffic did double, but congestion didn't happen besides, again, Heathrow and a few others. But the Dreamliner is not actually used for point-to-point. The Dreamliner still goes to Heathrow and still goes to the major airports. So it's just that probably because of the price and the economics of the 380, airlines were very hesitant to pour all that money. They say this is a very risky investment. It's way less risky to invest in a smaller aircraft, which is a Dreamliner, than to invest in a massive ship that is a 380. And now the question is, and we had actually at GLE Baz on Twitter asked us, is it possible that the 380 came to market too early before China's population starts flying in rates comparable to Europe and America? Well, the question is open because, again, passenger traffic will double. We haven't seen that congestion, but will that congestion happen? And coming back to my point earlier about me complaining about my landing path over my head that might hit me in 10 years, I'll have moved by then anyway. But it's true that the question mark is there because will there be possible to create new airports at the rates we're seeing currently with the new Istanbul and the second one in Beijing, et cetera, et cetera? Maybe at some point there will be congestion similarly to Heathrow, and, because there's no 380, people will have to move to secondary airports that will prove Boeing right. Or, I don't know, I'm not saying they shouldn't have closed it. I'm not saying they were right to have done it, 20 years ago when they started the program. Just saying it's more murky than, Airbus was, the EU pride and they were wrong. And Boeing was so.
No, I don't.
It never works that way.
It never works that way. And I think the market has shifted, at least for long haul in developed countries, for planes like the 777, especially the next generation 777. Yes. Airlines want. And in that, the 900 is going to be able to take nearly as many passengers as the 380, but on two engines.
I think that's a big thing.
That's a huge thing. It's very appealing. And I mean, in terms of China have invested in the infrastructure for primary and secondary airports in, all the way down to tier 3 cities. And I still think you'll see them investing in A320s, 21s, and the 737s and those types of airplane more than something like an A380 because they're so much more versatile.
No, I do agree.
For such a varied landscape. But who knows? Again, if Boeing and Airbus can't predict the future, then we sure as hell can't.
No, we can, obviously. That's why people listen to us, Alex.
But we can speculate until the cows come home, and that's the fun bit.
Yes. The other thing that a lot of people have asked is it not possible to retrofit the 380 into a freighter? Well, Airbus tried at the very beginning. I think they even had a few orders, but they quickly realized that it was, again, not very economically sound, but also very complicated to simply fill the plane with their two decks, right? And they never actually went into it.
The numbers never got off the drawing board and no one even looked at it.
And I think because the cockpit is not located on the second deck, on the second floor, on the upper deck, as is, for instance, on the 747, it is impossible to retrofit a door, that opens in the front, like the 747.
Yeah. There would have to be major structural changes. And I think, and even then, the maximum takeoff weight was never originally delivered. So I think, if my memory serves me correctly, and I might be making this up, there was a FedEx or UPS order that.
Yeah, that's what I remember as well. Something.
Yeah, they did. They ordered 10.
There you go.
Oh, they both did. UPS and FedEx ordered them, but they never obviously materialized.
Is it UPS and FedEx that said, oh, well, we're not going to go for them? Or is it Airbus that said, you know what, we're probably not going to be able to make it? Or maybe it was simply that it was so expensive they said, let's ship first the passenger version. And then they basically, because it was not making the numbers, never went to. Because, that's another thing about Boeing versus Airbus. Because a lot of people say, because, Boeing was so smart with a 747 to make it retrofit it as a freighter. Yeah, well, if you look at history, when they actually built a 747, talking about forecasting and predictions that being wrong, Boeing said, you know what, we're pretty sure that our own 747 will not last very long because it will be overtaken by supersonic, including their 2707. Thus, let's prepare for a future where the 747 will be obsolete and make it as a freighter. So actually, the decision to make it as a freighter was because they had wrongly forecasted the future of travel.
Hilarious.
It's always complicated. The life cycles of building an aircraft are so long and so expensive that, and we can see that currently with that's middle of the market, a 797. They're still not sure they wanted to build it. It's like, 15 to 20 billion investment for Boeing to actually make it. And it's not like an easy decision to say, let's do another aircraft. It's yeah. So
No, I don't envy the people that have to make those choices because you're essentially betting the farm every time you do it.
yeah. There were actually also, that was very nice to see, there was a lot actually of Boeing pilots and also Boeing fans being unhappy and sad about the demise of the 380s. It's not like, like football
no one is
teams
celebrating this at all.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's a bit sad, but I mean, again, we'll be able to fly it for at least, let's say, 14 years. Yeah. I think 14 years. Emirates will be your company of choice if you want to fly it, and you should, because it's really, again, a great aircraft. I'm still sad to see it go.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Those who are not really sad to see it go, I think there were a rumor, I don't know if it's true or not, and it's very ironic. Lufthansa and Air France, because they're accusing Emirates to flood the markets with their A380, they're like, actually, it's not a bad thing that 380 disappearing because they will rein in a little bit these Middle Eastern carriers. It's very ironic. I don't know if it's ironic. True. By the way, the rejigging of the order of Emirates might mean they're not getting their Dreamliners at all, which, if you remember, guys, I think I said in a few episodes ago that the Dreamliner order from Emirates was never very strong, and I think they might simply forego it, because now if they have 350s and 330s, why buy on top and complicate even further their aircraft mix by having Dreamliners? I don't know. Have you heard anything about that?
No, I mean, I think we initially speculated, as did a lot of people, that was a massive show to force Airbus to make some pretty difficult choices. Even the way they did it was unusually ostentatious for Emirates in the way that they revealed this order. So yeah, I think you're right. I think that this might disappear into the ether or get converted to additional 777 variant orders.
Al Baker, our entertainer-in-chief, has also said Qatar is not going to be the launch customer for the 777X, but going to be amongst the launch customers for the 777X, along with Emirates. We still don't know who's going to be, the launch customer, but they're all going to the direction. Even IAG just bought 42?
Yeah, it's proving to be a popular plane.
I'm looking forward to the foldable tips of the wing.
I know, I can't wait to see that in the flesh.
It's bizarre that people are reacting, probably not you and me neither, but it's bizarre that people are reacting with a little bit of anxiety saying, will these actually hold in flight? Yeah, but there's a lot of other moving parts that do hold. Why wouldn't those actually hold, right?
Yeah, I think it's because it's one of the visible ones, You think about flaps and ailerons and all of that stuff that move constantly. Well, not flap, but certainly ailerons and elevators and all that stuff, There's much more to be worried about.
Your name is one. We'll talk about that in a few. Have you seen as well? So there's a new accounting practice called IFRS 15, which is adopted widely in the world. Obviously not in the US. They have their GAAP. And because of that accounting rule, all the companies have to kind of restate their financial statement, including Airbus. And that revealed something that everybody knew, that basically they're selling their aircraft at 50% discount.
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, I think that those book prices that you see quoted have always been known to be hugely inflated and overly indexing on all of the necessary costs, to build these airplanes, and are amortized over the life of the airframe anyway. So I don't think anybody was hugely surprised. And maybe 50%, the average number was a little higher than people expected, but I think it was the worst kept secret in the industry. And it's the same for Boeing and everybody else as well.
Everybody, exactly. Another company that has fun with its accounting is Rolls-Royce. They lost, oh my God, how much is it? $1.6 billion a pound. I don't even remember. They lost, I think, pounds. They lost because they have to pay compensation for their Trent 1000, so the Dreamliner. I mean, this is really staggering number, the losses of Rolls-Royce.
Yeah.
And no accounting practice will save that.
No. And I heard the Rolls-Royce engine CEO on the radio last week, and he was very sanguine and practical about it, saying, this has been a major screw up. We've set aside this amount of money. They've also withdrawn from contention to provide the engines for the 777-9.
797.
That's it. Yeah, the 797 as well.
Okay, yeah.
They just can't commit the resources. They've got too much to focus on. And I think they did this in the past as well. I can't remember which airframe it was for where they withdrew from it, and people said that might have been a strategic error. But I think kudos to them for not overextending while they have I think a lot of people would criticize them for going after another project when the last project was such a monumental, in the big scheme of things, screw up on their part.
I keep saying 797, but we don't know the name. And if you look at the internal name, it's called 7K7. So could that be 7007?
Oh, interesting. I don't know. That's a good point.
At some point, both of these Boeing and Airbus should go away. They will run out of this middle number.
Yeah.
So there are only so many. Anyway, because Airbus doesn't have the 380 anymore, there's going to be some layoffs, but what are they going to dedicate their time on? And one of the big rumors is they're going to do a further variant of the 350 in order to actually compete with the 777X. And I flew to San Francisco, the 350-1000. It's already massive.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how long can an aircraft be if you want to compete with the 777X?
I wonder if they would, instead of making it longer, or as well as making it longer, if they would make it wider slightly as well, so you could fit in an extra seat.
Yeah, you're actually
width-wise.
probably right. It just makes sense that they're now thinking of it also because they wouldn't want to cannibalize the 380 before. Now they don't care.
Yeah, exactly. They've got a lot more wiggle room.
Yeah. Just because I found that super funny. It's not interesting news, but the new senior vice president of communications at Boeing is named Toulouse, and Toulouse is the name of the city of the headquarters of Airbus.
I didn't know that. That's pretty funny.
I don't know.
I think it's like the new head of Nintendo America. His last name is Bowser.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah, which they've done a really good job of playing into as well. So I just think that's wonderful.
Okay, so I don't know if a BA will ever hire a CEO with such a fun name, but their new vintage liveries are pretty cool, right?
They're wonderful. They're absolutely wonderful. They've done such a good job with it. The BOAC on the 747, the BEA, British European Airways, on the 319 or 320.
319, yep.
And then
Landor on a
747, so there's one more that they have to unveil. Two have arrived, the BEA one and the BOAC one, and they look fantastic. And I think I don't know if you saw this article that zoomed by yesterday. BEA was famous for having red wings.
Yeah, I was about to go there. Thank you. Go.
So interesting. They're so
fascinating.
They were all red, and this was sort of famous because you could spot them from miles away.
Yeah.
But the way that the wing is designed on 320s, and also for safety regulations, it was impossible to paint the wings, at least the top of the wing, red on a 320 because of the structure of the wing, and also they need to be 80% reflective for emergency situations, which I didn't know. I thought that was interesting. So on the underside of the wing, there's the center strip, if you will. They painted that red, which I thought they've clearly put a lot of time into that. And they could have very easily said, screw it, we can't do it. And here are the reasons. But they did, and I thought that was fascinating.
You just mentioned the safety regulation that I was completely unaware of.
I had no idea.
How? I really wanted to see the Landor one.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. And what's so wonderful and so BA about this is that the plane that they're applying that livery to used to wear it originally.
Yes.
Old enough to have worn it originally.
And probably will wear it until they retire it.
Oh, good.
Since these planes the 747 will start to be retired in like 3 to 5 years. Well, they're not going to repaint it just for one.
Nor should they.
So that's amazing.
I love them. I love this is such a great trope in the airline world of airlines doing this, because you see them and they're so breathtaking, and they're bringing back, especially for an airline of BA's age, bringing back these iconic, not only the iconic liveries, but the brands as well, BOAC, BEA. Although tangentially, I was reading about BEA's history yesterday on Wikipedia. So it's worth going to read because they were responsible in some regards for some pretty catastrophic accidents. And actually also for the birth and death of some British airliners as well. So it's worth going back and reading that chapter in British Airways history. And
it's also how BA is able to say they are 100 years, because actually it's a constellation of different airlines.
Yeah, exactly.
That merged and merged and merged. Because I think if you actually think about one airline that has kept its name since the start, I think probably the oldest one might be KLM.
Yeah,
Not sure.
I believe so.
So let's stay on BA a little bit. I'm going to ask you about your recent trip. You went to holidays in California. Did you go to Auckland or San Francisco, was it?
San Francisco in this instance, yeah.
Because I haven't heard the story, guys. I just heard that Alex, and if you follow him on Twitter, was pissed. So there must have been something happening at some point. You flew economy, I think?
Yes.
Because I just read that BA has introduced new menus in premium economy. They look pretty good, actually. And
the feedback seems to be really good as well.
Yeah, so they're making some efforts, but apparently not enough for Mr. Alex Ian Hunter, because what happened? I'm curious because I don't know. Again, we haven't talked in 6 weeks, guys. I just had bits of moments of your trips and you had mine. So what happened, Alex?
It was so infuriatingly terrible. I've never been so annoyed in my life in a airport. And actually, it's very important to differentiate. This was only at the airport. The rest of the experience I'll get onto at the end was not. This was just at T5. The whole thing was a comedy of errors, which would have been hilarious if it wasn't so utterly infuriating. It didn't bode well when we left. We stayed at the Thistle Hotel, which is right at T5, right by the pods, and the pods weren't working. Which is an inauspicious start to the day. And then one was working, and this whole trip was a great reminder that traveling solo and traveling with a family are completely different exercises.
Yeah.
And I should not apply any of my rationale or any of my strategies that I do when I'm traveling by myself to when I travel with my family.
Yeah, because otherwise your family is still at Heathrow whilst you're in the air.
Well, yeah, exactly. So we get to T5 eventually. And this is me, my wife, and my 3 kids ranging in age from 8 to 1 years old. And the pods come in at the north end of the terminal, and we walked down to the first wing, which is the length of T5. That is what it is. It's not that big a terminal. When we get within view of the first wing, there must have been 50 or 60 people in the queue to get into the first wing, let alone...
Oh, wow, I've never seen that. Was it a Monday morning or something?
No, it was Friday morning.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, God, okay. And it wasn't moving at all. And so I said, no, that's fine. We'll just go to the Club World check-in, which was practically empty. We got there and the person said, no, sorry, you can't. I said, oh, I'm a gold card holder. It's fine. She said, no, you can't come in here because you have a buggy.
No way. What?
And I said, what? She's like, why don't you go to the first wing? And I said, because look at the queue. And look at the queues here. She said, no, sorry, you can't come in because you have a buggy. We're not equipped to handle buggies. I said, but I'm not asking you to check the buggy in. I'm just we take it to the gate like we always do. Yeah, sorry, you're going to have to go to the first wing.
That's bad.
Yeah, so I thought, okay, so we went in the queue at the first wing. It went as quickly as you would expect it to. It's not very fast, but not very slow. And the person that checked us in was lovely and managed to take everything that we needed. And of course, there was no issue checking in the buggy or anything like that. She processed everything as quickly as she could, made sure we were happy with our seats, which we were. And ordinarily, when you go from first wing check-in by yourself, you go through dock check and through security, which then dumps you out in the first class lounge. Mm-hmm. And ordinarily, you're only allowed to bring one guest. But I noticed that families were going through, and there was no way that all these families of multiple people, there was no way that they were all gold card holders, and there was no way that they were all in first class. And so I said to the check-in agent, are we able to go through? Normally, when I ask that question, they say, I'm very, very sorry, but you can only bring one guest through. Ordinarily, I'd let you try, but no. Please go to the priority check security just outside. Fine. That's no problem at all. But this lady said, absolutely, of course, go for it. No problem. And so we did. I thought, oh, brilliant. That's good. So we get to the dock check, which is in between check-in and security. And I was told off in such a manner that it was like being back in prep school.
My God, what?
This lady rebuked me in front of my family and everybody else that was waiting in the queue for trying to bring more than one guest through. And I said, well, your colleague who just checked me in said it was absolutely no problem. And this lady said, who did? I said, one of your colleagues over at check-in. And she said, no, which one? Which desk? Who told you that? Meanwhile, there were only 2 dock check gates open. There was a queue forming behind us. There was already a long queue at the other one. This lady left the desk to go and speak to the person that checked us in. Meanwhile, abandoning the queue for maybe 5 minutes, and then comes back and says, now, she made a mistake. She's not supposed to be working first anyway. She doesn't know how it works. Loudly in front of all these people. She should know better. I should know better. And she comes back, she said, I've just given her a stern talking to. I'm looking at my notes here because it was so bad. And she would let us to go through on this occasion, but I was warned to, quote, not to try this again.
My God. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Really?
So I'm like embarrassed because I'd promised my wife, I said, this is going to be great. This whole, she'd never been through the first. And I'm like, I'm so humiliated. And so we get to security, which my kids are really good at security. They know exactly what to do.
So a father like you, obviously.
They just know what they're doing. Even the baby, like she just,
that's your DNA.
We have it down to it. So it's not like we're holding up a queue or anything. We don't even stay in the first class lounge. I'm too pissed off. There's nowhere to sit anyway. We leave when we walk under the underground passageway to the gates at the B concourse. And I go up and ask the check-in or the gate agent, do you want the buggy now? Because sometimes they like it beforehand so they can tag it and check it. And they said, actually, yes. And if you'd like to come, we're about to start boarding anyway. So if you want to collect up your family and come. And we did. And they started to check us in and they said, well, hold on a second. Your infant daughter, who is attached to my booking, my ticket, the name doesn't match on the boarding pass, doesn't match her passport. And what had happened was, she said the reservation shortens it sometimes because it's an infant. And because we're using archaic systems, there's only a certain number of characters available.
Trust me, I know that.
I thought, yeah, okay, this is...
with my name.
I get it. And she said, it's taken only the last 2 letters of your surname. And that doesn't match the passport. And I said, but your system did this, not me. And she said, yeah, the reservation system will automatically do that, especially if it was booked on a third party. And it was booked on Iberia. And I guess, again, because the systems are so ancient, they can only send over a certain amount of data between the 2 reservation systems because there's an ancient intermediary. She called ticketing and hummed and hawed and spent 5 minutes. Again, another queue. Boarding has started, a queue developing behind us. And she said, okay, they're going to call me back, but you should be prepared not to travel on this flight.
What?
And I was like, yeah, that's just not going to happen. Yeah, I said, because this is not our fault. This is your reservation system's fault.
Nothing to do with you. And by the way, sorry to interrupt your story there. If that was the case, why was it not flagged before? Like when you checked in, you're already at the gate.
Exactly. The boarding pass had been issued. All of the APIS data had been entered weeks before. There was no issue there.
And name checked with the API in the US, which is one of the most stringent in the world. So,
exactly.
It's
there was 3 or 4 points at which, if it had actually been a genuine issue, ticketing called back and said, you might need to buy another ticket.
What?
Yeah. No and I was like, no. What? And it's ultimately not this person's fault. They're dealing with an ancient system. But I am by this point, having been through all this other stuff, and there were other little bits of frustrations that aren't worth getting into now to save everybody's ears. But by this point, I was getting agitated and frustrated. I sent my wife and my sons to board. I had been flagged for Quad S security screening as well.
Oh my God.
That is what it is. It's just a part of traveling to the US. But I said to my wife and my sons, go, get on the plane, get settled, and all of that. We might see you on board, we might not. And eventually they told me, just get on and make sure that you deal with this when you get to SFO. And I said, make sure I deal with it. She said, yeah, go to ticketing and make sure you might need to buy another ticket to get home. Otherwise, they might not let you fly. I emailed BA after I got on the airplane. And I said that the tone was matronly, rude, unhelpful, and embarrassing. And the whole experience from getting to T5, every person that we interacted with, check-in, dock check, security, lounge, and boarding, the experience was so bad that I thought I was being trolled.
At that point, you'd written a message to me and said, I'm done with BA.
Yeah, and I said, and by that point I said,
of course,
to my wife,
I get it.
I'm never flying with BA again. This threat of us being kicked off the flight was just the last straw. The reason why I'm going to rescind actually I haven't decided yet, but I should say this. It's very, very important to point this out. The flight over was the single best BA flight I've ever had. The crew were exemplary. It's like they've done every masterclass on customer experience ever. They were so attentive and they were so good, not just to us with the kids, which they were as well, but there was a chap sitting, my wife was in 31D, the chap in EFG, the other aisle seat in the block of 4, had ordered a vegetarian meal, which they brought to him. And at the end of the meal, they said, I haven't touched it. Is everything okay? And he's like, to be honest with you, it wasn't very nice. The cabin crew chap, our entire cabin crew was male, by the way, which I thought was interesting, said, oh, hang on a minute. He goes up to premium economy and gets a vegetarian meal. And the guy said, no, it's fine. You really needn't. And he looked at it. The cabin crew took the cover off. He's like, that doesn't look much better. Wait here. Goes up to first, gets the first class vegetarian meal and brings it back and says, here you go. Let me know how this is. And of course, it was delicious.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Not only that, without asking, they bring my wife a premium economy meal, which she didn't notice, but I did. And I said to the person, thanks. You didn't need to do that. It was really, really, really great. And just throughout the flight, little things, just the conversational nature of our interactions. He said, so where are you off to next, Mr. Hunter? I notice you travel with us a lot. Where are you going next? As opposed to looking at a script and then reading the script. It was so conversational. It was so natural. My wife was blown away. Some friends that we were traveling were like, was BA always like, I was so impressed. Good. Unfortunately, when we got to San Francisco and I called the BA Gold Line to resolve this ticketing issue, they were like, yeah, you're to SOL. There's nothing we can do. You're going to have to buy another ticket because...
Oh, really? Oh, my God.
Yeah.
So did you end up doing that?
No, I didn't. I went to San Francisco. No one batted an eyelid. We boarded. The flight home was fine.
Oh, okay. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank God.
I also got when I emailed BA, and it takes a lot for me to do that, I emailed BA and I got a very personalized... not a templatized or formatted response saying, yeah, we massively dropped the ball here. We don't think you're going to run into any problems. Get to the airport in time. We can't actually do anything because the ticket was issued by Iberia. If you do have to buy another ticket, we'll reimburse you. We massively dropped the ball here and we're sorry. I don't look for compensation. I didn't ask for compensation. I didn't expect it. I don't want it. I don't want to take up any more of the show with this.
Yeah, of course. I get it. But yeah. It's disappointing.
It's massively disappointing. And interestingly, my brother flew down to Cape Town on BA and had a horrendous experience. And it came
in flight, you mean?
In flight. And it came back to these two separate
crews.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's this disjointed experience that we rail on BA for because sometimes they can be world beating. Again,
and sometimes it's just crap.
Yeah,
sorry.
They were as good as the Cathay crew we experienced on our way to Hong Kong in October, in terms of attentiveness, just delivery all around. So good. Frustrating experience. And this is the year I've said that I will explore other airlines just out of curiosity, not as a way to spite BA or anything like that, just because I'm curious. I'll probably still re-up with BA for Gold this year, but I've booked flights already on other carriers. I've already experienced one in Aeromexico. I'd like to see what else is out there. I'm not forcing myself to go on one world carriers because that's the way it works. So again, frustrating experience on BA.
This year for me is also key because I have to renew Star because Star, once you're gold on Lufthansa, you keep it for 2 years. So if you're able to renew in the first, you get 2 more years. That's a revolving system. Last year, I just missed out, so I have to renew this year. And the same because finally, you'll be happy to hear that I don't have guaranteed gold with the BA anymore. It's the last year I have it. So I need to actually renew to keep it next year. And that's the big question for me. Which one I'm going to go? Maybe I go to SkyTeam again. I don't know. I'm free.
Yeah, it's rather liberating in a way because I'm looking at flying from San Francisco to Boston in August and I'm going to fly United.
Yeah.
I never would have considered that for reasons we've talked about in this show, but we've been overwhelmed with feedback saying, no, they really upped their game. So I'm going to try them. And the one thing I don't know is where I should be collecting my Star Alliance points. I don't know. If anyone has any ideas, let me know.
Yeah, it used to be that Aegean was your best bet because it was a good fast track to get to gold because that required less point. I'm not sure it's still available because obviously Lufthansa, I guess, a big one saying, hey, guys, I mean, for us, you need to travel a lot and then you go to a smaller airline and you actually fast track yourself. But still, on Flyer Talk, there's a ton of discussion about that. I'm just locked in. Lufthansa out of, loyalty for 15 years. So I'm not going to move. But if I were to restart all over again, would I go United? Maybe.
Yeah, I'm very interested. I think, we can talk about it later, but it was an interesting process to research.
Yeah. Since you just looked about BA's experience on Instagram, Jez_K, who was writing also against BA, said that for balance, a story of BA's occasional customer service brilliance. Yeah. He was boarding a flight at T5C, so the sea gates to Narita, and realized he'd left his laptop in the first lounge at T5A, so it's 3 terminals behind. But the cabin crew immediately spoke to the ground ops. The lounge staff found the laptop, turnaround manager drove it to the plane, and it was the last thing to get on board before the door closed. All in space of 25 minutes. And he adds, I'm beyond impressed and relieved. Astonishing level of customer service. Yeah, it's good when that happens.
Yeah,
Indeed.
It is.
I had a cap delivered to me. That's not BA. I think that was Emirates. I forgot my cap, and I love my caps. I forgot my cap at the check-in counter at Narita, and I'm boarding my flight and suddenly realize, where is my cap? Okay, it's Japan, obviously. And I asked the crew, I think my cap might have been left at check-in because I don't think I had it in the lounge. And 10 minutes later, my cap was reunited with me in the flight. That's amazing. I love that kind of stuff. Since I just mentioned that I might go for a SkyTeam, and we mentioned that KLM was the oldest airline in the world, I think it is. There's an interesting spat happening currently between Air France and KLM. So Air France, historically, the government of France owned a big chunk of that. I think they owned up to, 20+%. Now they are at 12 or something. The Dutch government itself didn't own a lot, only, 5%. And because there's a lot of disagreements currently about the strategy, without telling the French government, the Dutch government just bought 12%, going to 14%. So they want to be equal partners with Air France. The French are not happy about it because, truth to be told, for once, the French were actually selling their shares, trying to, say, no, we're not going to engage anymore. We're going to just keep a small stake. And it's almost like an historical error by, and I'm not going to make any Dutch friends here, by Air France, because back in the day with Air France bought KLM, that's actually how it happened. KLM was on the brink of disappearing, losing lots of money. Air France buys it, makes it a big group, and decides, because a lot of other airlines were just, you know what, we're just going to, absorb you, and the airline will be called Air France. They decide to keep the KLM brand name. They decide to keep operations, of course, at Amsterdam, even actually giving some of the routes from Charles de Gaulle to Amsterdam Schiphol. And now, years later, it bites them in the ass, pardon my French here, because suddenly now Air France is not making as much money as it used to. KLM is making a lot of money. And suddenly KLM is saying, you know what? We want to take our destiny back in control, to the point that it could lead to a breakup of these company. It all started because the current new CEO, the Canadian guy, Ben Smith, said that he wants to integrate these two companies more, because although they share stuff, they still don't share, I think, aircraft purchasing, and there's a lot of stuff that still operate separately. And when, of course, he wants to do that, the Dutch suddenly are saying, you know what, bye-bye. Of note, a friend of mine, Paolo Privitera, whom I met in San Francisco when I was last month, is a huge, he has 3 billion miles on SkyTeam because he's a huge Delta and Alitalia flyer. I think his daughter was probably 2.5 as more miles than you and me combined now. He flies in economy, does a lot of price fare hacking, and he's told me that actually when he flies KLM, he's always recognized, even if it's the last row on the aircraft, whereas when he flies Air France, nobody gives a S. So it's interesting to see that actually. That's
interesting.
Yeah. Would you think about moving your miles to SkyTeam at all? Would that be an option?
Virgin Atlantic and Delta and KLM Air France have been pointing their ships towards each other for a long time. And I think that they've just signed their first proper, fully integrated interline agreement last week. And the fares that they have, especially Tattle, are very competitive. And everybody that I've spoken to in the US raves about Delta.
Delta, yeah.
Everybody I've spoken to that's flown on Virgin Atlantic recently has said how much better they are, because they were getting a bit tired maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And actually, as I spoke about a few episodes ago, my experience with Air France to and from Paris was fine. I've flown KLM a few times and been underwhelmed. I don't know. I think in terms of, it's the same with any alliance choice, isn't it? You've got some really strong options in one direction and weaker options in other directions. But I still think across the board, One World is the strongest in terms of product quality. Again, this is the year I'm going to try Delta. I'm going to try Virgin Atlantic again, especially in the premium cabins, just to see what's out there.
Yeah, I'm thinking of doing that, although not this month, but starting next month. Since we're talking about alliances, a very interesting development. So Etihad is still trying to stop the massive losses. I think it was about 3 billion last year or something, with crazy. So they're ditching a lot of their orders. I think they're just going to take delivery of 5 of their 350, and they'd ordered more than 60. They're also going just to take 6 777X instead of almost 30. So they're really like cutting down. But the big one, since we're talking about alliances, the rumor was back in the day that when they had Air Berlin, before Air Berlin failed, that they already were eyeing a Star Alliance. Now the rumor is getting stronger because they are about, or maybe today they did it, they're about to ditch their partnership with American Airlines, because American Airlines didn't stop insulting Etihad, since Etihad has had enough. And they're approaching and making an alliance with United, and they're probably going to make a bid to join Star Alliance. That's an interesting development if someone is interested into Star Alliance or is a Star Alliance member. For me as well, because I really like Etihad. Even a smaller Etihad product, and you experience it, I would welcome that.
I agree. Although I still think that Emirates and Etihad will become one in the next 5 years. I just don't see how it's going to work otherwise. If the US 3 wouldn't make a strategic investment in in Etihad, then I just don't see how they can continue at this rate of spend. I'm a huge fan of all 3 of the ME3. As I've said many times, I'm a big fan of American Airlines. I don't know enough about United other than what I've read to comment. Wouldn't joining an alliance help them? Would it remove some of this friction between them? Is there enough of an overlap for that to be of value? I mean, you don't see any US and ME3 tie-ups other than JetBlue and Emirates, really, other than what's built into alliances for Qatar and American.
Maybe also Etihad now is clearly they are in a weak position, and suddenly they're sitting at a negotiating table. The dynamics is different, and maybe it's easier now to talk to a United because they're not like, oh, here we can spend as much as we want. Now they're becoming more reasonable in how they're spending. They have to make cuts. They have to be paying attention. So maybe they're also more ready to listen to United saying, it's all speculation, United saying, okay, this is how we're going to make our interlining. You keep those off the table, you stay in your region, but we're not strong on this route, so we'll do, I don't know, it could be a lot. Whereas maybe 5-10 years ago, they were like, we're going to rule the world. We're going to buy Alitalia, Air Berlin, all these guys. And we see how that turned out. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I'm just, as a passenger, as a customer, I would welcome, because I like Etihad, although I dislike their current airport, that they are part of an alliance. But you're right. Will they merge with, I was in San Francisco I was running the innovation program for IATA, but that's as much as I can say because I'm NDA to death. I wish I could say a lot. Yeah. Other the stuff that I overheard both in the meetings we had and of course over dinners and drinks. And there's a lot of, but anyway, Qatar on its own, since we're talking about our entertainer-in-chief, is still ordering 321 Neos and 321 LRs. And Al Baker has said that it will feature a brand new business class that is not currently in Qatar Airways fleet, so that's not the Q suite, but it would provide a lot of privacy. And if you look at what exists in current 321s with, a lot of privacy, there's not a lot actually. American has one in their first class, business class, whatever you want to call it. But, they're herringbone, but there's not a lot of privacy. I mean, there is, but it's more like Cathay Pacific.
Yeah.
Probably the closest one would be maybe what? JetBlue. JetBlue might. Do they have a door in JetBlue Mint?
The Thrones do, yes, but the 2x2 do not.
Because it probably will be 1-1 if this says privacy. Yeah, it'll be just interesting to see what happens there. So, my trip this time, since we're on the MB3, it's a long one, but I'm going to shorten it because I don't want to bore you audiences to death about a travel report, but there's a few quirks that was interesting. So, for those who follow me on Instagram, no, I didn't go to San Francisco via Dubai and Hong Kong because I just wanted to fly. It's just because it was just less expensive than flying first to San Francisco, back to London, and then from London to Dubai and back to London.
I still want to know how you found that.
No, I mean, the thing that really put the price down a lot, there was two things. First, it was just marginal. It was Emirates was running a promotion for Christmas, New Year's Eve, I think minus 10%. I don't remember. So I was able to find a flight that my client would pay to Dubai and back, so a simple return. It was not too expensive, but the big fare that I was able to find is flying Cathay Pacific from Dubai to San Francisco, because Cathay Pacific, neither at San Francisco or in Dubai, is a primary airline. It's not their hub. So I really went for a really low price, but it was a really long flight. I mean, I took like it was 8 hours to Dubai with Emirates, then almost 10 hours to Hong Kong, and then like 15 to San Francisco. That was super long, man.
So because it was ticketed, the flight started and ended in Dubai.
Yeah, two separate tickets. That's very important, right? So Emirates bought on itself and Cathay Pacific on itself, return. But it provided me with a few quirks, especially transferring in Dubai and putting my luggage. I'll explain. Because I was leaving for 2 weeks, I, for once, wanted to check in. I could have taken probably the carry-on I had with me, but I said, you know what? Do I really want to have the carry-on for 3 flights, moving in airports? I don't need it. I just have my backpack. Let's put it in the hold. But then I was looking for information, and this is where, a lot of it breaks, because I was looking for information. How could I do in Dubai? Again, 2 separate tickets. How can I do in Dubai to actually transfer? Yeah. And I didn't want to go out to grab my luggage at the belt and re-enter for one very simple reason. Cathay Pacific doesn't provide mobile ticketing at Dubai, so no way for me to have my boarding pass. No. And out of experience, everything but Emirates, because obviously Emirates flies all day, usually the check-in counters only open 3 to 4 hours before a flight. And I was arriving in Dubai 8 hours before the flight. So I said, if I go out and I take my luggage, then I'm stuck outside for 5 hours before being actually able to get a boarding pass that allows me to get in. No way I'm going to be stuck outside in Dubai. For me, it was just a layover. I would like to work and rest. And I'm reading on Emirates' website that they have, and this is really, the way it's written is not clear. They have some interlining agreements with Cathay Pacific. So I'm saying, okay, so they talk to each other on specific routes. I'm like, maybe I can actually ask to have my luggage being transferred. Other thing that's being said on the website again, and on many different forums, you can go as soon as you arrive in Dubai, even if your luggage is only tagged to Dubai, but you're flying with a third-party airline, in my case, Cathay Pacific, you go to a Dinata counter, you show them the tag of your luggage, and you ask them to put them in your next flight, and then you don't actually go out. So they catch the luggage for you. It's the handling company, Dinata, for those who don't know. They catch the luggage for you, and they put it in the next flight. Okay, this is my potential option in case I cannot request at Heathrow. So I'm going to Heathrow. Let's make it short. I'm going to Heathrow, and I arrive at the counter. And I tell the guy, can I transfer this directly to my end destination, which is on a separate ticket to San Francisco? And he's like, yeah, I think I can. And that's really funny, he's telling me airlines databases do not talk to each other. So I don't know if you have another ticket. Basically, just trusted my word. I said, CX, to Hong Kong, and CX, from Hong Kong to San Francisco. I actually simply gave him the numbers and the cities, the pair cities, and he wrote that on my tag on his computer, and that's what he printed out. So, okay, so you basically just wrote what I just told you. I could have told you that my luggage would end up in, Timbuktu. And yeah, he says, yeah. I'm like, okay, so do you think that Dubai will read that? And actually says, yeah, it should be working. I'm like, okay, it should
be working.
Like, I'm like, oh my God. But I'm like, I'm going to do it anyway, because again, I'm like, I don't want to carry this thing, so I'm going to do it anyway. And in my head, I'm like, I'm going to go to Dinata anyway in Dubai. There's a reason I say that. You'll see why. But then as he tries to give me my boarding pass, and again, we're talking simply about the first boarding pass, the one that leads me to Dubai. Mm-hmm. Emirates wouldn't issue the boarding pass because my end destination is in the US. The API checks are not made, although I had made them on Cathay Pacific's app. But since the databases do not talk to each other,
they didn't see
issue my boarding pass.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And I tell the guy, yeah, but we're just talking about you giving me my boarding pass to Dubai. I'm not asking you to give me a boarding pass to San Francisco. Makes calls. I had to wait 25 minutes calls. The supervisor comes. I don't know. It wasn't clearing, but they gave me a boarding pass anyway. So at least I'm like, okay, let's see the next stop. I arrive at Dubai Terminal 3, so the Emirates terminal. And of course, the first thing in my mind is my luggage here? And will it follow me to my next flight? So I go out, and the first thing I'm thinking is like, I need to find a Dinata check-in counter.
Oh, yeah.
They do not exist at Terminal 3. All the information that was given to me, there's only Emirates counters because Terminal 3 is only Emirates.
Yeah,
there's
that
no
makes sense.
third-party counter. So the information on the website of Dubai Airport is actually incorrect. There's no Dinata. And I've asked many, agents and says, do you know what the Dinata? Like, there's none here. And I'll go to another and another. And like, okay. So I'm like, okay, so what do I do now? So I'm like, you know what? Let's go to Terminal 4, which is the newest terminal at DXB, because since it's the third-party terminal where Cathay flies from, they will have this Dinata thing. Let's go there. And that's another thing. On the website, Dubai's airport's website, and on maps that you can find online of the layout of the airport, there's a train that leads you between terminals because this new terminal is a bit out there. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to go to the train. But it's impossible to find. I'm like looking around, I'm like walking, and I know Dubai Airport. That's again, when you see that I'm an outlier, and not a lot of people are transferring in that, they're actually either keeping with Emirates or flying with Fly Dubai. Yeah. That's pretty much it. So I'm endlessly walking around, not finding my way. I mean, I had all the maps in front of me. I said I should go to A because from A there's a train to B and whatever. And I'm going around. For some reason, I end up in a security and I'm going against the flow at security. I see buses and I'm like, okay, so maybe that's it. And I'm like,
Jeez.
Can I go to Terminal 4 from here? Do you have a boarding pass? Like, no, because I can't have a boarding pass because I'm flying Cathay Pacific, which doesn't have mobile boarding passes, and there's no Dinata check-in counter here. And she's like, okay, I'm going to trust your word on it. So yeah, there's a bus. And I answer, is it not a train? No. Okay. So for those who will ever do that, the bus that from Terminal 3 to Terminal 4 is every 35 minutes. So basically I waited, and it's fine, but the experience is really broken, guys. I mean, it's not something that I would advise you to do. Anyway, I end up going into that bus. Fantastic. You see a lot of the aircraft because it's a bus going just below the noses of all these parked aircraft. I arrive at Terminal 4, and then I see a Dinata. Like 2 hours have passed since I've landed. So in my head, I'm like, my luggage is on the belt, like going around alone, and no one actually is picking it up. And thank God, that was the only part of the experience that worked. The guy logs in the computer and says, yeah, we have a luggage tagged for you. Is it here? Like, yeah, probably. Again, he uses the word probably. I'm like, okay, I'm going to trust your word on it. He was able to actually give me a boarding pass for Cathay Pacific. Thank God. So I had my boarding passes, was able to enter Terminal 4 because I had a security to enter, which of course then I had to prove I had a boarding pass. Then went to a lounge. That also is not very clear because there's like 2 lounges for Cathay Pacific, one for the morning flights, one for the evening flights, but one is not open at a certain time. So I ended up going to a priority pass one, the Marhaba.
Oh, yeah.
And the good thing on this specific lounge, you can pay a little fee and you have a room. And because I was managing, so my watch, I had 2 watches. I know I'm a dork. My Apple Watch was already set with the time at San Francisco. And I was like, I need to adapt my sleeping pattern already to San Francisco because as soon as I arrive, I need to work. So that moment in the early afternoon in Dubai was the time I was supposed to sleep. So I paid a little fee, got a room for myself, slept for 4 hours. It was fantastic. I would highly recommend that in Dubai. At that point, I'm like very curious. I'm like, so that train thing. Well, it turns out there is a train actually, because I see it. There is actually a train that connects you from gate C to gate D, which is exactly what I was doing with the bus. It just, I could never find it. I was able to find it from D to C, but not the other way. Just here to say that if you guys are ever doing one of those like I just did, it's really not clear. The information is absent from the website. The forums all tell you different stuff. Put a lot of time. It's not guaranteed. My luggage ended up in San Francisco. Although, to be frank, when I was in Hong Kong, I went to a Cathay Pacific counter. I said, okay, do you have a luggage for me in the hold somewhere? Yeah, it arrived. But it's something that took me 3.5 hours to short between London and Dubai.
I cannot get over that.
For airlines that actually on their websites say that they have agreements. And again, I'm NDA'd for the program I did for IATA in the Bay Area. But I mentioned that. And yeah, like you said, Alex, for your own Iberia versus antiquated systems. And of course, privacy, but they do not talk to each other. So it's nice and staggering that the person in London simply trusted my word, wrote down the flight numbers I gave him and the destinations I gave him. And that basically made sure that my luggage would end up.
So technically, I mean, or theoretically, I don't know what verifications they did. You could have said any flight.
Yeah, probably at some point they had to match that I was in the flight. So Cathay Pacific, if they had received that luggage at Dubai, but there was no person attached to it, would have not probably let the luggage in or something.
One would have.
I'm guessing. I don't know. I'm guessing. But yeah, it's a strange experience. But I mean, it worked well. And the flights themselves for Cathay Pacific, I flew a 330. Have you ever flown a 330 by Cathay Pacific?
Many times, but not for a while.
Business class, the seat is clearly narrower than a 777 or 350.
Because they have two versions, don't they? They've got a regional one with the similar one to Cathay Dragon business class product. And then they've got this one, which is much more like the 777 long haul.
Exactly. It's just a smaller, narrower, smaller screen, probably a bit older product, but it's really fine. Interestingly, I don't know why, on both legs, so Dubai, Hong Kong, and Hong Kong, Dubai, when I was going back, the crew was probably the best I had ever seen on Cathay Pacific. I don't know. There was something maybe because it's less premium route, or they were more attentive. They made more an effort. They were like more used to it. They've been at Cathay Pacific for a very long time. I don't know. It was just fantastic experience. The words you use, conversational, engaging. I'm not saying that the Cathay Pacific is not, but Cathay Pacific can be a little bit stringent sometimes. Asian companies can be. They're very friendly, but they're not have the demeanor that you will find in a U.S. airline, for instance, obviously, right? Not like, hey, Paul, how are you, right? But in those times, all the crew were able to read me, understand I was pretty casual, but they never went into too casual.
Yeah.
It was really, really nice. I mean, I really enjoyed both of these crews a lot. The difference I will say between Emirates and Cathay, and I'll take an example and you'll realize that. Back from San Francisco to Hong Kong, it's 15.5 hours for crying out loud. And usually I never do breakfast, but, you have nothing else to do. So there was this young crew, very nice, clearly, just been there not a long time, but she was very efficient, trying her best. And when I say trying her best, she was really, really good.
Right.
And I tell her, can I just have the fruits? Because, I don't want to have a heavy breakfast. Can I just have the fruits? And she says, yeah, of course. And she leaves. Same experience at Emirates. Can I just have the fruits? And I'll compare the result. At Emirates, they either bring you just a little plate with the fruits and they put in you, they give you like a fork and a knife or whatever, and you have your fruits. At Cathay, she didn't come back. The head of cabin came back with a stern look, giving me the entire plate, pointing me at the fruits, said, you can only eat the fruits if you'd like.
That's weird.
I was like, okay, it's not a problem. I was trying to make your job easier by asking the fruit. And by the way, guys, I'm not complaining, but that, for me, shows something that Cathay Pacific is a little bit more process driven, like a lot of Asian airlines and Emirates. The crew has a little bit more leeway. I mean, they have to provide me with the entire experience of the tray, and probably that's how it goes. Of course, if I just want to eat the fruits, I can, and that's fine, by the way. I'm not complaining. I'm just very interested in the delivery of how I got that. That's the head of would come and serve me that, and not my usual cabin crew, because probably the head said, no, you cannot do that. This is not along the processes. The policy says you have to bring the entire tray. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to tell the passengers that you should get the entire tray.
Do you think they misunderstood your initial request?
No. I think it's just a process versus, and really Cathay Pacific is fantastic. Do not read that, into something negative. They're really good. They're really amazing. I love them to death. I've flown them 12 times already this year in 2019. It's just that I see that flying Emirates, which I hadn't flown for 8-9 months, I see that Emirates, for all their faults of now, and I kept saying that the 380 being so big that sometimes the rapport with the crew is a bit less, there's less crew than before, so they have less time to dedicate to you. They still have that demeanor, that more laid back attitude, and they will fix it for you.
Yeah.
Whereas Cathay Pacific, sometimes it feels that the experience is very high, but they will still respect the process and the policies they have in place. No matter how much I can sometimes criticize Emirates on this industrialized look, they're really, really good.
Yeah.
To being able to have so many passengers in business class in an entire deck on a 380, and being able to, being on time with all the delivery, but at the same time fixing different things for different people. It's fantastic. I admire Emirates.
I admire Emirates too. I think that they're such a good airline, such a well-run airline, such a generally, as you say, for the scale, consistent airline.
Absolutely incredible. A few other bits about this trip. Of course, I stayed at the pier. Both those times I stayed for 10 hours.
And did you adhere to the rules?
Tell me the rules.
Well, the rules that
the rules.
On the app, remember, that we talked about a couple of episodes ago.
Yeah, though there were some American dudes shouting on the way there. But there was a reason for it. And they were all jealous of me. I VPN'd myself to watch the Super Bowl. It was 7:30 in the morning in Hong Kong, where the Super Bowl was happening in the US. And I was watching it, and it was fun because I'm not a huge fan of American football. And I know, because I kept saying that I was supporting the Rams. Sorry, guys. And of course, they lost. Well, there you go. Meaning, I understand why some of the Americans in the lounge were actually vocal, because they were watching the game as well.
Yeah.
And what else can I say? Man, because you know San Francisco so well. I hadn't flown in San Francisco for so long time. What a wonderful landing.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It's beautiful. It's wow.
Yeah, it's great, because no matter which approach you do, especially if you're coming basically from outside of the U.S., you come in from the North Bay across the top, and sometimes if you have a little bit of a hold, but you get spectacular views of the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco and the greater Bay Area before you you go south of the airport and then do a 180-degree turn and come in and land. And it's always over the water. That's the one I did. It's lovely.
And the experience in San Francisco, my experience was really not both ways, because I was an ESTA returning passenger, although not returning in San Francisco, but returning in the US, and went out, and I was able to use one of the machines, and it took me literally, 5 minutes. And then I went, and thank God my luggage.
You had a very different experience than me.
Really?
It took us about an hour and a half to get through immigration.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
And we're Americans.
Oh my God. Because I was in my head, I was thinking like you. I'm like, I haven't done San Francisco in a long time. It's going to probably be, and we were going out of all the, the government suspension, whatever in the US. But I was like, maybe there's going to be I don't know. And no, it was fantastic. The airport is okay, I guess. It was the one thing. Have you seen? They opened a new observation deck.
Yes, they have. I haven't experienced it yet because I'm always in the wrong terminal. But not only have they've opened another observation deck, a new observation deck. They're opening a Grand Hyatt connected to the airport. Supposed to be July, but I reckon it'll be end of the year. And they've also, in the International Terminal Pier A, they've opened a new food court area with a lot of San Francisco restaurants with a presence there, which we did experience, and it was effing expensive, but very good. Very good.
For those who want to experience the observation deck, which opened exactly a week before I was there, I was gutted I couldn't go. It's on the G side. So that's United. So that's another reason to fly Star Alliance, because if you fly Star Alliance, you'll be able to go to the observation deck. I was flying One World and I was not. But it's really funny, the lounge of Cathay Pacific at San Francisco. Have you ever been in it?
Yes, I have. They have the little mini noodle bar.
Yeah, but there's a quirk. The lounge has two different sets of seats of colors. They're the newer ones that are gray, and it's very minimal, but very nice. And there's a part which clearly somebody from Cathay Pacific went to the Lufthansa lounge and stole all the seats. They're exactly the color from the Lufthansa lounge, yellow and brown. And I was like, no, but come on, this cannot be. This is exactly the same seat. I'm sure the Lufthansa staff of the lounge came one morning and said, oh, where are the seats? Well, Cathay has them, let me tell you. Anyway, the last bit, and then I'll ask you about your Mexico flight. The last bit was completely bad shit. So after doing my IATA thing, so people have some idea, IATA thing, I stayed for 2 days in San Francisco. What a beautiful city. We'll have a chance to talk about it another time. I often criticize it, but, I understand why you like it, Alex. I went back to Dubai because I was working at a conference there. Step, hello, guys. And then the crazy thing, I'm leaving back to London. I'm arriving at the airport, the business and first class check-in terminal, whatever they call it, or Terminal 3. And I get to the immigration officer, because crying out loud, they don't allow you to go to the e-gates unless you register, but you cannot register on the way out. You have to register on the way in, praying God that the registration desk is open. It never happens to me. So I was never able to register no matter how many times I go to Dubai, because my passport is able to register. Anyway, and I go to the guy and I give him my passport, the usual thing, right? And he looks at me and says, is your name Carl?
Carl?
I'm like, Carl, yeah. And I look at him. And he says, do you have a second passport? And it was early morning and I was being facetious. I said, no, my name is Jason Bourne and I have multiple passports. So at least I made him laugh, but that didn't allow me to get through. He told me on my database, and we're talking about the government database, that's the immigration officer, I cannot let you through because I can see you have a second passport with the first name Carl. He wouldn't give me more information, obviously. And he says, go back to Emirates. And I went back to Emirates and I said, what do I do now? They say that I have a second passport, which clearly I don't. I'm not a spy, guys. It took 30 minutes to solve this. Somewhere in a database exchange between Emirates and the government of Dubai, they probably had an ID mix-up. And they had linked my name and my whatever ID that, we don't see. We're not talking PNR, we're talking ID. They had linked it with another passport. So they had to call and unlink it and whatever. But it was a very strange experience, man.
That's stuff like that always makes me slightly nervous about.
Yeah, me too.
The structural integrity of the IT infrastructure generally in aviation.
How does that happen? And honestly, when an immigration official, so representative of the state you're in, that tells you have a second passport with first name Carl, no matter how I made him smile and laugh a little bit with my joke, you're like, so now what, right? I'm like, if they think I have a second passport, who am I to tell them no? I mean, I don't know. It was a very bizarre experience. I was half awake. Trust me, I was very much awake 30 minutes later trying to say, let me out of this country. Don't worry, I have nothing to hide or anything. Oh, well. Anyway. And of course, it was the 15th of January, and the news about the 380 had just been announced. And I flew the 380 in my favorite seat, 23A, which is a bulkhead on Emirates in the back. I love it. Yeah, I'm going to miss that flight. And you know what? Emirates has Wi-Fi and data on every single flight. BA, learn, please.
Oh, actually, that is a very important point. On my beautiful Boeing 747-400 on my flight from London to San Francisco on BA, there was Wi-Fi, and it was very good. It wasn't free by any stretch of the imagination.
That triggers me I'm sorry because I keep rambling about this. When I was in San Francisco, my Cathay Pacific flight from San Francisco to Hong Kong was at midnight. I'd spent all my day. I was like, I'm going to just go early to the airport. Like, anyway, Alex and me, guys, you know us. We go early to the airport. So I go 4 hours early to the airport. Plus, I'm not sure about security in San Francisco. I do not know it as well as you do, Alex. And by the way, hi, Will. I saw your brother in San Francisco, brought me out. It was fantastic. But I didn't ask him about security in San Francisco either. So I was like, let's go early. I had a middle seat, for crying out loud. I mean, like an ale in the middle, middle, but still. And I wanted a window, but I had all the expert flyer alerts you can think think of, but there was no seat. That was a 350-900. Because you triggered me that memory because of the Wi-Fi thing. Because I had Wi-Fi on the way there because I had a 350-1000. And do you have any window seat anywhere? I cannot see it on the map, but maybe you have like a secret seat somewhere. And she smiles and says, we're looking for someone to go on the earlier flight. I'm like, oh, and the early flight is like 2 hours later. It's a 777. And I'm like, oh, why not? Not staying at San Francisco for 2 more hours, but staying in Hong Kong for 2 more hours in the pier. Good idea, right? What I didn't realize, I said yes. Plus, they had a window seat, which for me was like fantastic. I'm going to have for 16 hours a window seat instead of being in the middle in the 350. Well, the 777 didn't have Wi-Fi. And for 16 hours, even though I'm not a huge fan of Wi-Fi, I was like, oh my God, why did I not ask it?
Yeah, I keep forgetting it's just some of the 350s, isn't it?
All the 350s, but not all of the 777s. It's still, for me, a bit strange as it's a premium route for them. All the flights are full. That it wouldn't choose a 777 with Wi-Fi for that route.
Yeah, maybe they don't have the luxury of being particular about which airframe they use. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, sorry guys, because we're doing only flight reports. Since we're going to Mexico, I want to hear about Aeromexico. I'm switching completely topics here. How was Aeromexico, Alex?
Well, I didn't know what to expect. I think we chose them because a fare popped up that was a decent deal. It's very interesting because normally when you're going generally from Europe to North America, the flights leave in the morning or early afternoon and arrive in the afternoon or early evening in the US, especially if you're going kind of a little bit further west, like the West Coast. This was interesting because they were both red eyes. So the flight left at 11 p.m. from T4, which having not been to T4 in 20-something years, I seem to spend my life there now. It's such a weird terminal.
Is it? Yeah.
And it arrives at 4 a.m. in Mexico City. So it's one of the very first, if not the first flight to arrive in Mexico City, which for our purposes was fantastic because you get off the plane and we start filming. We were there to film an episode, which will be out by the time this episode comes out. And then the flight home is one of the last to leave Mexico City. It's at about, again, maybe 10:30, 11 o'clock at night and arrives at about 2 or 3 in the afternoon in London. So you get 2 full days either side.
That's really good.
Which is great and very helpful for us. They use a 787-8. And our flight over there, we were in economy, having spent like way too long looking at the whole auction bidding upgrade process. And the lowest it ever dropped each way was like 1,400 pounds.
Oh my God.
And I was like, yeah, no chance. No. I mean, it's not even that good a product, because I'll talk about it later. I actually got to experience it. It's not worth it. So I was like, okay, oh, well, it is what it is. I looked at the seat map and picked the second row of economy. Greg was in the first row of economy, the bulkhead.
Okay.
And had a row of 3 to myself, which was great. Greg had a seat to himself, and then somebody not only sat next to him, but also this person was a talker and just talked at him. Like he was sending me messages on his phone going, help me. I might need you to kill me. Because like literally from the moment they sat down until after the seatbelt sign went off, this person did not stop talking. And he managed to spy a seat across the aisle with another seat open that was also the bulkhead. So he quickly made his excuses and moved over there shortly thereafter. I didn't take the meal. I didn't even have a drink because I knew I wanted to sleep.
Yeah.
Because I knew we were going to have a long day. So I got my 3 seats laid out and I slept pretty much the entire flight, which was wonderful and very comfortable. Again, the flight was not busy. The flight attendants were, efficient and friendly, as you know, not particularly friendly, not chatty or anything like that, but perfectly pleasant. Greg said the food was not anything to write home about. The IFE was limited but fine. They had Wi-Fi. It was very, very flaky and very, very expensive. But other than that, the flight was fine. It was perfectly comfortable. I didn't feel like I'd paid too much or too little for it. Landing in Mexico City, there's quite a lot of paperwork. It's much like the US. They have all these forms you need to fill out. It turns out you can file their form of an ESTA online, as long as you print it out and bring it with you to present to immigration when you get there. Expedites the whole process. Okay. What they don't tell you is you must print it out in a color.
No.
So we wait in the queue for like half an hour, get to the desk, and the lady's like, you have to fill out this form because you had to print it out in color. But just come back and see me and all of that. It didn't really matter. It wasn't the end of the world. But pro tip, if you're going to Mexico City, do fill it out ahead of time, either on the airplane or ahead of time. And if you do fill it out online, for God's sakes, print it out in color.
I don't have a color printer. Oh my God.
Yeah, so just do it on the airplane. It's really doesn't save you that much time. We had arranged to meet our production crew. They were going to come pick us up at about 8. And there's a pod hotel right in the middle of the airport.
Looks very Japanese style.
It is exactly what it is. Very Japanese, very space age and futuristic. So we booked a few hours in there just so that we could power nap for 90 minutes, have a shower, feel a bit more human. Worth absolutely every penny. And it was like maybe $40 US. It was absolutely worth it. They're very comfortable, very clean, good shower facilities and all of that. And then hit the ground running. Getting out of the airport itself is taxi or Uber is really your only option. And it was expensive. Actually, no, it's not that expensive. It's just the traffic. You have to deal with Mexico City traffic, which is among the worst in the world. Coming back, we had shot all day. We'd started at 7 a.m. By the time we got to the airport, it was around 9 p.m. I was exhausted. So I just said, I got an alert from Expert Flyer. We were just talking about those guys. God, I love that tool.
Yeah.
Saying there's an available upgrade. It was not cheap, but I had a speaking gig in London that afternoon that we arrived back and I needed to sleep. So I paid a lot of money to upgrade. And it was...
Did you pay online or
I paid online.
counter?
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
Actually, it was very easy. The flow through the app was... I did the whole thing on the app after I got the notification on the way to the airport, which was very, very easy to do. I got my seat, got my ticket, and I did that. I'll come on to that in a second. Mexico City Airport is kind of a funny story. It's bursting at the seams. It's completely rammed. It's slightly falling apart. They're trying to patch it up because they were supposed to open this new Norman Foster designed airport, which we talked about. But they started it, and they spent billions, and they expropriated thousands of acres of public land to do it just like further out of the city. And people were really pissed off. They voted to stop. But all of our friends in Mexico City said, no, they're still working on it. And they are. They're still working on it. We chartered a helicopter.
Yeah.
And we flew over it, and there's work going on in earnest.
Sorry to interrupt your story. The cancellation of, so if they were to stop and they have to, pay penalties to the construction companies and do some environmental stuff to make sure that, the airport is clean when they leave the site and everything, $5 billion. So the entire airport would have costed in the end between 15 to 30. That's also the crux of the matter, what people voted no, probably. But even because they need to stop it, because they engaged money in already, all in all, they say that stopping the thing is $5 billion. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. But you can absolutely see why they need a new airport.
Clearly.
It's so busy. It's so full. Every acre of it is being used. To get to our helicopter flight, you go through this sort of the guts of the airport as well, which was just a nightmare as well. And flying out and over it, you could see just it's constantly in use.
It wasn't the new president, whatever, wanting to open another airport on a military base, but that sounds completely crazy for security reasons, not because of the military, but because I think the surrounding site is not really big for heavies.
You would have to fly very close to an active volcano to make this approach work, and it's not going to work. So I think that they're holding that up as the comparison, saying we really need to have a new airport. It's either this or this, and we've already started with this, which agreed has not been managed well, but it's really our only choice. So it'll be very interesting to see what they were doing with that.
So were you like in an international terminal?
Yeah, we were
Aeromexico.
Yeah, it was Aeromexico's primary terminal. It's a big airy terminal. The premium class is like its own little section for check-in, and then you go through security. There was a variety of different lounges that you can access via Priority Pass and being an Aeromexico in business class. And so we tried a few of them. The first small one we tried was nice enough. And then we moved to one of the big Aeromexico ones. And it was a bit like, is it the Cathay Lounge, which is sort of a roofless or ceilingless series of walls within the terminal. So it's kind of up a level, but you're sharing the ceiling with the rest of the terminal, if that makes any sense. So it felt very temporary, almost like these partitions. And I'd read reviews that the lounges weren't great, and they were okay. They weren't fantastic.
Because Aeromexico is SkyTeam?
Correct.
Meaning you had no yourself special status to access any lounge.
No, I had none. So it was because either I had priority pass to experience the first lounge that we went into, which closed before our boarding, so we moved to this big Aeromexico lounge. And it was okay. It was nothing special. But the whole terminal itself was falling apart, and they were fixing things, patching things up all around. So it felt a little bit like a construction site. The product itself, the business class product, it was a lie flat product with the pillow built in to the seat. Do you know who else uses that? I think United maybe used that. A few of the American carriers use it. It was comfortable. The food was okay. It wasn't anything special. They had Mexican wine, but I'm not drinking, so I didn't try it. The service was very friendly, really friendly, which I really appreciated, but it was absolutely not worth what I paid for it. I just needed to sleep, and I did. I slept very well, and the flights were on time. It was fine. It was both the economy and the business class. They were fine. I would absolutely not go out of my way to try them. It was very Air Canada. I mean, it was fine, you know, to dust off that old trope. But yeah, on Mexico City, on the other hand, I completely, absolutely, 100% fell in love with. It was a wonderful city. I can't wait to go back.
I don't think I flew to Mexico City. I think I flew to Cancun for all my sins. And I don't think I even had a layover. I think it was a direct Iberia flight, probably Madrid, Miami. I don't remember. But anyway, meaning that I've never been to Mexico City itself. I've been to other parts of Mexico. So when I read your enthusiastic it's not a report, but just views on whether it was Instagram or on Twitter. And also you just released as well on Attaché, not the episode where you said it's coming now, but the food tips. How do you look for food? Yeah. That's clearly also filmed in Mexico City. Yeah, I'm going this year for sure. I have to. This looks like exactly my type of city.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I can't emphasize enough. The transportation and the airport itself are what they are, but the city is worth that pain.
So you would totally do a layover at Mexico Airport.
Well, the problem is that you can't get into the city without, an hour's worth of commute either way. But it's such a good city that I would say, yeah, it's probably worth it.
The next time you would probably maybe fly something else in Aeromexico? Not to diss Aeromexico, but would you try Iberia or?
No, I mean, they were okay. I don't know if Iberia would be any good. BA is a known quantity. That's fine. I actually looked to try and go via the US, but actually, weirdly, the connections between the US and Mexico City aren't nearly as robust as I thought they would be. So flying to Dallas or New York, or the timings just didn't work out, or weren't as generous with the time that we would have on the ground as these Aeromexico flights. So it was worth taking an Aeromexico, and I certainly wouldn't avoid them.
Oh, the immigration thing. So besides having to print out the color version of ETA, was there like this button you press?
No, weirdly, in Mexico City, you just walk out. But in Monterrey, when I was last there, you had that.
And Cancun probably, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to confirm that for the next episode. I think pretty sure it was Cancun where I landed. I had that, and you press a button, you either red or green. If you're green, you pass through. If you're red, you're checked. Yeah. Oh, I thought that it was like Mexico wide.
I thought it was too. In fact, I'd prepared it to talk about it in the script, but it was like any other airport. You just walk through the nothing to declare or something to declare lines.
Oh, well, there you go. Oh, by the way, did you know that Europe will implement an ETA system?
Yes, I did see that.
Similar as the ESTA for so all passports that currently can come to Europe without having a visa. So, for instance, a Schengen visa. So, let's say an American passport, you will have to announce your arrival, etc. The same way that we Europeans do for the US. These ETA things are becoming very prevalent, which is not a visa, but just like an announcing of you coming. It's just a procedure, but becoming really prevalent.
Yeah, for better or worse.
I think, by the way, Russia, I'm going to Moscow still next month. Sadly, I need to do all the procedures. You've been there. It's complicated, right?
Yeah, it is.
There are 6 airports in Russia, not Moscow. They're more in the eastern region. 6 airports you can apparently land at with an ETA system. So you just announce your arrival, because Russia knows that it needs to attract more tourists. So they are testing these systems out. So thank God at some point, at least for people who have friendly passports, will be allowed in Russia and Japan as well. Japan is also introducing an ETA soon. And the airlines are, not that they're concerned, but they're like, where does the responsibility lie? Is it us as the airline who have to make sure that you, Alex, have made your necessary papers to actually, if it's not a visa, it's just an ETA, right? It's an authorization to travel. It's complicated.
It is complicated. It's increasingly so. And technology weirdly is making it worse.
Unlike you with your name issue, you're not called just Hunt. I mean, your daughter, I don't know. It's just My God. Anyway, anything you wanted to add more about either Aeromexico or Mexico City Airport?
I'd be very interested to follow on this story with the airport themselves, and I hope they do get a new one because they desperately need it.
So, guys, if you're in Mexico, live there. Hello. Sorry, we took 88 episodes to actually go to Mexico City, but we had on Monterrey. Actually, if I'm looking at the list of airports we want to cover, there's a lot first, but also I realized that we haven't done a single European airport for at least 8 episodes.
Oh, goodness.
So at some point this year, guys, you'll be flooded by European airports. We're very sorry for that. We're trying to balance, but in the balance, for some reason, I lost track of actually doing European airports where we're based. So the next one will be Astana. We promise it's not going to be 6 weeks before we record that one, probably earlier, because both of us are not traveling in March. We hope you're going to have good travel. I'm going to say one more thing about that. One of my Cathay Pacific flying. So I think the co-pilot is on the PA and says that the pilot is named John Williams. It was a very well orchestrated flight.
Oh, that's so bad. And so good at the same time.
Alex, safe travels.
Safe travels, guys.
Oh, sorry.
That's a lovely anecdote to end on.